Hello, everyone. Welcome for joining the interview today. I'm joined with Susie Shaw of Citrine Wellness today because we wanted to punctuate and acknowledge that it's Mental Health Awareness Week this week with a theme of kindness. As we know, we're all in strange times at the moment, and we're all learning to live differently, and we're all definitely finding ourselves in places and roles that we weren't expecting. And many of us, including myself, suffer with anxiety and bouts of depression, of which this kind of scenario in lockdown is not helpful or beneficial, or can bring its own new challenges. We know that human relationships are central to our mental health and well-being, and emotional and social bonds have been essential to our survival throughout our evolution. So it's strange times for us. The Mental Health Awareness Week is focusing on kindness as its theme, and this theme highlights the fact that just a smile and a wave and a good morning and just being pleasant to the people around us can really, really help mental health. And also we should acknowledge the fact that we never know what somebody is going through when they're walking past us looking sad, and that maybe just a small smile can make a big difference. So on this note, I wanted to move into talking to Susie, who for 20 years was working with the NHS and charities, working in a very specialist sector where she was raising awareness of cancer in the next generation so that they would be less afraid to talk about cancer. Well, now Susie's moved into the mental health sector, where she's now doing exactly the same thing through Citrine Wellness, which is a company she's created that offers workshops and courses that can be taken inside small and large businesses, where she helps people acknowledge the differences between us, recognize when maybe we're not feeling ourselves, and learn to be non-judgmental and to be more supportive and work together better as a community. So over to Susie. Susie, could you tell me a bit about yourself and tell us about your organisation?
I can. Thank you, Alex. Although you're amazing. If you could just follow me and talk about me, that would be fantastic. You do it lovely. So yeah, as you said, for 25 years of my working career, it was very much within the NHS and charity sector. The main focus was working with children and young adults who had cancer, and it was working with them as well as their families and their peer groups. And looking back at it, the role that I did was very much supporting their mental health through their journey. So it was an amazing role. I did lots of things within that time. I got to meet amazing families and young people who taught me a huge amount about resilience, about life, about any kind of illness, whether it's a physical illness or a mental illness. There's not a guidebook, so everyone will have their own experience, and everyone has that right to have their own way. So I did that the last 17 years. I was heading up and leading a brilliant service and team who were all remote workers. So this current way that we're all working, that everyone often keeps making reference to, the new way of working. For the likes of me and my team, this was normal. This is how we worked for 17 years. We were in our offices, we were at home, we were all over the UK, but we had brilliant ways of communicating and keeping in touch and supporting each other. So yeah, it's been quite interesting watching the world go into lockdown and suddenly people kind of recognising the challenges that can be when you work from home. But I did that. But in a nutshell, about a year ago, Alex, I was at home and having the same fears of not wanting to go out, but for very different reasons. And those reasons were I'd been diagnosed with generalised anxiety disorder due to work stress related issues, and it was hideous. And it was we all have anxiety, we all experience it. It's a good thing, you know, there's a reason why we have anxiety in our day-to-day world, to protect us and look after us. But when it becomes an illness that can take over your life and have a huge impact on you both physically and mentally, yeah, it threw me. I was an independent Essex girl who loved going out and socialising, and suddenly I wanted to hide. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I didn't want to go out, and to get on a train to go into London where I used to live, I'd have panic attacks. It was all hideous. It was horrid. And at that time, there was lots going on at work, and I left, and I decided that I would go it alone. I would create my own company. But I would join the mental health movement, because what I did know I was good at was creating safe places to have hard conversations. And now more than ever, we need to be talking about mental health, and we need people out there. We need to start that conversation. So yeah, COVID-19 wasn't in my business plan, so a little bit of anxiety's crept in the last few weeks, a few stresses, but we're trying to do the best we can, and just finding that balance. But it is what it is, and I love it at the moment. It's a lovely challenge.
It is a challenge for sure. So before we talk about what Citrine can do and does do for corporations, what advice could you give to anybody? I know that people watching this particular interview are going to be isolated. They've been isolated for some time now, but particularly worrying about their businesses. Looking at the moment in our industry, looking at July the 5th as a potential for opening salons. So they've got the anxiety of what's been, what they're currently living through, and what they're about to walk into. And so what advice could you give for just dealing with your day-to-day anxiety right now, and learning to cope with it and recognize it, embrace it, and cope with it?
Yeah, I think it's a good conversation to have, Alex, because a bit like I just said, everyone's going to be having their own experiences. So again, if I think back to when we first went into lockdown, the media was quick to judge and assume how everyone would be feeling. And one of their quick things that they said was very much, oh, well, anyone who lives with anxiety will have a nightmare. This will be awful for them. And I know that some colleagues that I know who are counsellors, as I'm also training to be a counsellor, were actually feeding back to us saying that in those first few weeks with anxiety of lockdown, people who were living with anxiety actually felt really calm, like they were the normal people. Like suddenly everyone's experiencing anxiety, like, hello, welcome to how I'm feeling. And also there was this element of everyone being told to stay in. Joy, great, I haven't got to go out my house. And I think there's a real lesson there around mental health. Everyone will have their own experience. So I know that for anyone who's listening to this, if you're living with anxiety or depression, you all would have experienced something different in the last 9 weeks. And some of that, you would have had joyful days. And oh my goodness, celebrate your joyful days when you wake up and go, yeah, I feel all right. I'm going to go do something. I'm going to go walk, because I love walking. But you would have also just had those days where to get out of bed would have been absolutely hideous and the hardest thing in the whole world. And I think what's really important is to own how you feel, own your story. And, you know, at the end of this, we'll all have a different story. And some people's story they will share and they'll tell everyone, and other people won't share their story. And I think that every story will be important. So some people will tell their story. If we're thinking if you're back in salons and you're seeing customers or seeing work colleagues, some people will walk in that door and be like, yeah, I've taken up knitting, it's great. I do yoga every day. I do Joe Wicks with PE, and it's like amazing and it's fantastic. And because we have this thought that we have to put a mask on, that everything's great. You look at social media and look at all these great, lovely, positive photos. And reality is that not everyone is having a great time, but we feel the pressure that we have to. So I think I would say just always be mindful of that. If it's you that's going through it, own it and be proud of it. Mental health is something, be proud of it. That's your mental health. Get to know it and you will learn to love it. Some days you will hate it, but own it. It's yours. No one else has the right to say anything about it. And understand it. Find the things that are going to help you live with it and cope with it. But also, be mindful, those people that you're working with, just be mindful, their stories. There'll be a story that they tell, and some people will have a story that they never tell. And I think it's about respecting that, because not everyone wants to shout off the rooftops what their story is. But sometimes it's just about letting people know that you are there if someone does want to tell their stories, and that's about just checking in. That's just about that simple question. How are you today?
It's interesting because you brought up an angle that that really resonates with me, because the anxieties that I go through are there are days when I don't want to leave the house, and I've worked from home on and off for 14 years now, but I do need to travel at a distance to get to the scratch office once a week, and sometimes for there is no rhyme or reason, I will have immense anxiety about just leaving Cambridgeshire and going to Kent, and times when it's really debilitating for me, but I do face it every time and I get on and do it, and so lockdown for me, what resonates with me is lockdown for me has meant that part of me has gone, yippee, I don't have to go anywhere other than Tesco, and even that I'm doing very, very rarely. And so what is going to happen to me, and I am recognizing and embracing it, is when lockdown is over, I'm going to have to go back to what I believe will be my normal life, assuming it is, and that will bring, I'm already prepared for the new set of anxieties that are going to race towards me, because it will be like, oh, maybe I didn't appreciate my time in lockdown when I was able to be kinder to myself, because I'm finding I'm being kinder, I'm being slower, more generous with myself, allowing myself to do things at a slower pace, but still getting everything done, but everything's slower and a little bit more gentle. And I'm finding that's a really quite a powerful thing for me at the moment. And I'm almost dreading what comes out the other side, slightly, but obviously because I'm a sociable person as well, I have that side to me. I'm also excited about it.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, what would be nice is, do you have any tools or ideas for I know that there are people that find it really hard to understand themselves. It's not necessarily about understanding other people, but what can you say to somebody who does experience sadness, depression, lows and highs, because they do come like that? What can they do to understand themselves better? Because obviously if it starts inside, it's a lot easier to express yourself to others if you can look inward.
I think, do you know what, and I agree everything you say, Alex. I think for people who like you and I, we're fairly open and feel confident to be able to talk about what we have lived. So before Corona came along, we had anxiety, we had stress, we had depression, and I think again, some people might be surprised by that because we seem like nice, lively, happy people, but that's that joyful mask that we're really good at putting on. But it's exhausting putting this bloody happy mask on all the time. But I think also at the end of this, like you said, there will be new people who have never experienced anxiety before, that as they go back to work, not only are there the people like us who have lived with anxiety, there's also going to be people for the first time experiencing anxiety of having to go back. And that's because, you know, there's something new out there, and there is a fear around it, and people are acting differently, and I think there's going to be a whole lot more of us who are having those feelings. And I think on how to look after it, and you know, there's a beautiful exercise that you can do, which is around looking at your stress bucket, and you just get a piece of paper, draw a bucket, whatever, just draw a box, it could be your stress box. And sometimes it's about just taking control. It's just about looking at what you can control and what you can't.
Would you say, I love the idea of what you've just said, because it is sometimes the simplest things that help us. So draw a picture of a bucket on a page, and I'm guessing what you're saying is to put in there the things that you know trigger you. So not just the things that, not the end result, but an end result can often be triggered. So it can just be that something, I don't know, something like there's a particular person you walk past on a dog walk every day that just, there's something about the energy, you can't put your finger on it, but you can say, do you know what, it's the man in the flat cap with the brown dog. I'm going to put him in the bucket, because now I've recognized that
Yeah.
man triggers something in me. I don't know what it is, but I'm of the belief, correct me if I'm wrong, that it's quite good to look at your triggers,
Yeah.
because they're coming from somewhere quite important, and then essentially sort of face them. And you don't have to face them on a massive level, but even in a picture of a bucket is a way of saying, okay, recognition, that's a good thing,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Absolutely, and it is, and like you said, it's that you have that piece of paper, and we don't do it. We don't make time for ourselves, and I think when you've got depression, when there's stress, when there's anxiety, there is so much going on in here, in this head. And actually, by sitting down, by writing, so like, yeah, it might be like you said, the man with the brown dog. I don't like brown dogs. There we go. I've put it down. I don't like brown dogs. That's what the issue is there. It could be homeschooling, which I would imagine for a lot of parents at the moment. It's like, I'm not a teacher. I can't homeschool. I don't like fractions. Didn't like them when I was 13. Why the hell do you think I like them now? And that I could teach them at the age of 44. It might be, it could be, I don't like the idea of going back to work. It could be, I don't want to listen to my neighbour arguing anymore. It could be, I don't like going to Tesco. I don't want to wear a mask. I don't, like you said, it could be current issues, or it could just be very personal things. So I would say absolutely, if you write them down, they are in front of you, you see them, absolutely brilliant to acknowledge them. And then it's about, what can you control? So what can you control there? So it's like, well, actually, that man who walks the brown dog, I know that actually in the last 9 weeks in my routine, I've passed him every day, he takes his dog for a walk at 4:30. Why don't I go for my walk at 6? And then I'm not going to see him.
Right, so it's actually, so what we've said there, because obviously that sounds quite obvious, but I'd say the journey is, number one, recognizing the man with the brown dog was the problem, rather than sometimes you can walk around feeling like something has just happened, but not recognizing, it was that specific thing that triggered me. So then of course the obvious thing is change your dog walk time. And so I'm thinking that what we're also dealing with, just sidestepping a little bit, is the other side of things is there will be people that are not used to spending so much time with family members. Now, this isn't a question of love, support or anything. It's just a question of a lot of us don't realize how much alone time we need until we don't have any. And in this situation where we can be in houses of 4, 5, 6 people and all the family pets, it's now gone on for so long that there can be times where you just think, I don't know what to do. Walking the dog or going to the shop or Tesco is not enough, because I'm actually going a little bit out of my mind, and now I'm getting more upset and stressed out because I love these people so much, but they're driving me a bit insane. What advice do you have for that, Susie?
No, I would say I would keep bringing it back to your stress bucket, because it kind of works on 2 ways. So if you've written that in there, and let's say that in the stress bucket we've got family all in one house. You could literally draw that. You could just draw a house and all your family in there. That in itself is creating stress. I think when you look at the stress bucket, it's about acknowledging your triggers, but then it's about looking at your helpful and unhelpful coping mechanisms. And it's a brilliant exercise to do, because it's about going, okay, A, what have I got control of? And B, how can I cope? How do I look after me to get through this? Because if that's causing the stress, so for example, it is about saying, okay, you've got a house full of people and it's about what are we going to do next? And like you said, it's that, do we all take different times out? It's about, do we go off to do that? Actually, I'm going to sit in my room for an hour. I'm going to meditate. I'm going to do some mindfulness. Or actually, I'm just going to sit in my room and I'm going to read. But it's about then having that confidence to say, all right, guys, I'm just going to go and disappear for an hour. And sometimes when you think it through, you're like, oh yeah, actually in 9 weeks, I've never actually said to my mum and my children and my husband, actually, I'm just going to go in the room for an hour just to read, because there's this pressure, isn't there? Like, my mum moved in with me, my husband and my 13-year-old son. She's been with us for 9 weeks. We don't live in a big house, but we brought her in to look after her mental health. And we were like, because we thought, on her own, depression, this isn't going to be great for a 74-year-old woman. So we brought her into our house. But it's hard, it's tough. You kind of suddenly are like, oh, okay, I've got to look after you. She's suddenly still my mum. So I'm 44, she's 74. She's still asking me whether I know how to boil pasta. And you're like, oh, yeah, I do. And it's like, I love you so much, but and it's about, write that down. It's about, that's my trigger. What can I control? What if it is real? Because sometimes some of our triggers are just thoughts that we're making up a whole story inside our head. So sometimes it's about, that trigger might not be factual. We've just sat there and made it up. And I think that's also a really good question. Sit there and go, hang on, I'm getting really wound up about this. A lot of the time it might be if you sent a text to a friend and someone's not replied, or if you're at work and you've not heard back from your manager for a few days, and we start making up stories. We catastrophize inside our head, and we're in this situation where a lot of time all we've got is our mind to play with, and our mind can be beautiful and our mind can be nasty. If we're feeling down, that's when we start getting a little bit paranoid, and we can start. And again, this whole exercise, you've got your bucket, you put everything in there, kind of look at it and go, right, what's real and what have I made up? I make up so much stuff. That exercise helps me for that, because I can look at something and go, I don't have the facts for that. I've made that all up. And just that in itself.
I mean, that's the word there is assumption, isn't it? Because we're all very good at assuming what other people think. I don't know why we do it, because we will tell ourselves that somebody doesn't like us, or that we behaved badly earlier, and we are literally creating a story from barely any facts and an awful lot of assumption. It's something we learn as a child, I believe, and it just travels with us. But seems to me what you're highlighting really importantly here is, I feel a good place to start is honesty with oneself. Because if you can't be honest with yourself, then you don't really stand much of a chance in other aspects of stuff you might want to do and be. And so if you can sit down with yourself and say, actually, this is not working for me, or this is very challenging for me. Honesty, number one. Then you address it, and address it with communication. And then you've got all these factors: withdrawing your stress bucket, you're addressing it, you're looking at it, you're quantifying it. And I think the other thing is learning, if you can, to empty your mind. What do you think about that? To try and stop that silly voice that's just like chimneying all the time.
Yeah. And I think you're right. It's about getting everything out of here onto a bit of paper to just, you know, I can remember at my worst, when I've had anxiety and depression, at my worst, the one thing that was just in my head was, if someone could just take my brain out for 24 hours so I could stop this mad thinking and thoughts that are going on in my head. That was all I wanted. And I just think that sometimes by doing that, you are getting it down. And what the joy of a stress bucket is, different things will come in and out of it. You could go back to your stress bucket a week later and go, oh, they've all gone, which is a joy, because you're like, oh, look, they've gone, amazing, sorted them out. You know, you might have a whole new load of stuff in there, but it's about, you know, there are beautiful things. There's mindfulness. There's, you know, on a practical level, what can we do? I think, I know I told you, explained this beautiful story to you. The reason I called my company Citrine Wellness was through my worst part of paranoia and panic attacks. I was drawn to, whenever I had to get a train into London, I was drawn to crystals, and I was drawn to the crystal citrine. I have no idea why, but it's supposed to give you confidence, and it's a good cleanser. And I would hold a piece of citrine and just hold it, feel the texture, look at the colour, and that would help my train journey. And I think for those of us, you know, there's another beautiful exercise where if you experience anxiety and a panic attack, or someone that you know is, the key is calm your breathing down. That's what you have to do, is because otherwise, if it keeps building and building and building, your breathing will get faster and faster and faster, and then we get tense and tense and tense. And there's a beautiful exercise which I do, which is called the 5 senses. So you don't need it. So if you were walking out and you suddenly felt you're having a bit of a panic attack, you just have to, it's about forgetting everything else, and you're tapping into your senses. So it's called the 5 senses. So you acknowledge, first of all, you just acknowledge 5 things you can see around you. Then you acknowledge 4 things that you can touch. Then acknowledge 3 things you can hear. Then acknowledge 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. And if you go through that really, really slowly, you're going to tap into all your senses. And before you know it, your breathing has calmed down. You're not thinking about anything. It's a really simple, beautiful exercise.
That's really beautifully living in the now, moving into the present moment, and existing and just being. I mean, that's what I love about you know, everything you're saying. Is it's also so much part of the spiritual journey, which obviously we're not here to talk about that today, but that's very much in the spiritual awakening and the actual coming inside, living within, and living within is so helpful. So I like that, because that's going to bring you into the now and just be and explore everything that's in your current environment, because I think a lot of the time we miss very important parts of life because we're waiting for the next moment and forgetting to live in this moment. And I remember someone once said to me is that life isn't happening now. Life's not happening tomorrow, it's happening now. And your lovely little thing there has just reminded us all, let's live now and enjoy now.
Absolutely.
Why eat an ice cream but be thinking about dinner tonight when it's really that ice cream? Oh, you know.
I love it. It is, and it's a good thing. I think it's a brilliant thing. If you're going, people who are going back to work and who are anxious, some people will have to get on a train, on a bus. And I would say use that because that it's going to be scary for people. You know, suddenly we're all wearing masks. We can't see people smiling at us. I hate it. I'm naturally a smiler, and I hate the idea of someone not seeing my smile. I love freaking people out and smiling at them.
We read, another thing as human beings, as we read our body language, we read our facial expressions far more than we even realize. So we're going to be inhibited a little bit, and this is just the way we will all naturally have to evolve for the time being. But Susie, I think we should get on to finding out exactly what you as Citrine Wellness can do. For example, in our industry, so salons of all sorts of sizes, all sorts of businesses, from warehousing and distribution, all sorts of things. How could anybody in the beauty industry who might like to tap into Citrine Wellness and what you do, what do you offer and how do you offer it?
So at the moment, it's all essentially about training, and it all started off very much around face-to-face training, which has gone out the window at the moment. So we've gone virtual. We can do virtual training. So I'm a qualified instructor in the Mental Health First Aid England courses. Now they're 2-day courses. But in the future, I strongly recommend, and it is, you know, at the moment, there's a big recommendation that all companies have mental health first aiders in the same way that you have physical first aiders. So we're kind of hoping that course is coming online. That is quite intense. That's a 2-day one. I love doing it face to face. But that's also about planning and what can happen in the future when we can be a little bit more together or have training in a room with lovely social distance between us. But before then, I've got lots of lovely online courses, which can be about, we've got a mental health awareness course, which is about 3.5 hours. We do it online. It's an introduction. We look at the stress bucket. So if anyone wants to experience that and do it, it's there a bit more. But it's about a little bit of an introduction to different types of mental wellness, illnesses and issues that are going on out there. And it's about starting that conversation. So we've got that, as well as I can create bespoke training for different organizations, because everyone needs something different. So some people are like, yeah, okay, well, we want this. And it's about, if people change culture and create a workplace where staff and customers feel really safe to talk about their mental health, as a business, you will thrive, and you will have the best reputation of looking after your staff. Your staff will be happy, they will be joyful, but they will also have bad days. But do you know what? They will tell you. You will support them, and they will recover more quickly, because people do recover. There's hope. Hold on to all those things. But people recover faster if they have that support network around them. So if we can get rid of that stigma around mental health, you can create a brilliant workplace where people can talk about it confidently. And again, that's also about people who don't have bad mental or poor mental health can talk about it and ask those questions and check in with people and kind of go, are you okay? And And we know that that might be anxiety, it might be depression. We know that suicide rates are going up in this time during lockdown. Suicide happened before this. Suicide does happen, but people will wear the best masks when it comes to suicide. And sometimes it's about just starting that conversation to allow someone else to say how they're feeling. So you will save lives, and that might be as your colleagues and within your business, but just as much it will be your clients. And Alex, you know, I'm a huge believer that within your industry, you know, your clients will come in and you guys, your industry, you're the safe people to talk to. They're out of their home, they're sitting there, and it might be the husband, it might be the wife, it might be the daughter, it might be the child, it might be the mother that's causing problems or is in that stress bucket. And it's always you guys that are going to share that. So as staff, you need to look after yourselves because you're hearing it, but also you need to know, how can I support my client here, because they're disclosing things, and I know I can have that conversation. So I think I like to think I produce brilliant training, which is fun because it's a hard conversation, so it has to be fun. So we do have a lot of fun in there, but we learn so much, and by the end of the training, hopefully people walk away with that confidence to say, do you know what, I'm ready to ask that question, I'm ready to start that conversation with someone. So that's all I want to do, is just work with brilliant people and start the conversation.
I will just punctuate that by saying I have in fact attended one of Susie's workshops that she did, a bespoke one she put together for 2 hours, and it was a hell of a lot of fun, and we all learned an awful lot, and we all really walked away with a deeper compassion for each other, with a deeper understanding of just each other's feelings, and the fact that small things go a long way. And the fact is that I don't think there'll be anybody watching this that hasn't had a really traumatic time in their lives. I mean, part of being a human means that we all experience trauma at some times. It's literally how we respond to it or how people respond to us, and the kinder we can be, the better outcome we hope will occur. Certainly by not having a kind approach to each other is going to be completely debilitating and unhelpful. So I think it's just nice to punctuate that it's Mental Health Awareness Week, and we've had this lovely discussion. And I will put Citrine Wellness details for anybody that may like to find out more about what Susie does, and maybe tap into her skills at some point. But meanwhile, is there anything you'd like to finish by saying, Susie, to the people watching?
No, I'd like to wish you all a happy Mental Health Awareness Week. I would stress that we're getting brilliant at the awareness bit now, but now we need to start understanding it. We can talk about it, but we need to start learning and understanding
and actioning. Don't you think? Because it's all well and good for us to say this, but next time we walk outside, maybe I'll smile at the man with the brown dog.
Yeah, maybe give him a smile. He might need it, Alex.
Exactly.
But look, I say embrace, be loud and proud about your mental health, good or bad. You will have bad days. Make the next day good. You have got control. There is hope. And we're all going to be all right. We've got a tough few weeks and months, maybe years ahead of us, but we'll be all right if we keep supporting and talking. And it's quite nice talking about it. It's all right. I like talking about it.
Me too. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Susie. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you, Alex. It's been a joy.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much for watching.